Okay, listen. The Devil Judge is better than Batman. I said it. Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to my comfy corner, where I talk about things that make me comfy and cozy, so I can stop bothering the people around me. And today, yeah, you didn't hear my intro wrong. I'm standing 10 toes down on it. The Devil Judge is better than Batman. And honestly, I'm gonna triple dog dare it down and say that the Devil Judge, like the main character of the Devil Judge, is the best version of Batman that I could ever want in my life. But before I get into all those ribbles and rambles, if you are new here and are just seeing my face, I have a couple of house cleaning rules. One, if you see the camera, just know you didn't. I'm still getting used to lighting and when's the best time to record, so give me some grace and space. Two, ignore this wall. Unless you are returning and you see and know the iconicness of this, I break down TXT lore, and that's what this wall is for. So if you don't care about TXT lore, ignore this. But if you do, please stop by and look at my other videos. 3, yes, this is a Dave the Diver official plushie. Thank you for asking. No, I'm not sponsored, but honestly, they can sponsor me. I saw the new updates and I'm excited for it. So Dave is now going to just be my little buddy here. And sometimes I'm going to squish him and hold him to calm me down. Because look at this, look at him. Look at the little guy. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go and look at my video games that I love or deserve more love. Dave is from Dave the Diver. Please play that game. I don't care how much money you have in your wallet. Trust me, it's enough. And yeah, with all of that being said, I decided to break this down into 3 parts just so that I could get the haters out the way in the first section. Then all the K-drama girlies come back because honestly, the cast is amazing and I'll get to it when I get to it. And then my last section will be like conclusion / my thoughts on how either franchise could be better. So yeah, with all of that being said, let's get into the first part, which will be me explaining Batman for those that don't know and also flexing how much I know about comics. Okay, so first off, I know what you're thinking. For all of the comic nerds that are gonna come after me and all the comic girly pops that are gonna come after me, like, Tiana, what makes you qualified to talk about Batman? You're not the creator, nor do I see you talk about comics in any of the videos. Well, first off, surprise, today's my first day talking about it. Second, I actually really love comic books. I love DC and I love Marvel. I know it's rare to see someone that loves both at the same time, but I do. And honestly, it's okay to be critical of things that you love and also have things to say about the things that you love. I don't know. Like, I feel like we're starting to come into an era, or have been living in an era, where if you support something, you have to 100% support it and you can't critique it. Otherwise, you're not a true supporter. And honestly, I'm not a fan of that culture. I am a firm believer that if you enjoy media or content or your favorite creator or whoever, and something happens to where you don't agree with it, you could still not agree with it and vocalize your concern and your opinions about it and still support it if that's not a big of an issue. So I will preface all of this by saying, as much as I love The Devil Judge, and trust me, again, it is better than Batman, and I'll get to it later, it doesn't mean that I don't like Batman. Robin, like original Robin that turns to Nightwing, he's my favorite. I have a couple of comic books. It's in my storage. But I love what Batman tries to do. I love what a lot of DC franchises try to do. And I'm saying all of this disclaimer just so that I don't have discourse in the comics about which one's better. Even though my thoughts on Marvel versus DC, I think that Marvel does a better job with storyline in terms of like having an overall universe. I think they do better like story mapping that versus DC, which I feel like they do better characters, but they don't do a lot of world building. Does that make sense? And I'll get into world building too in this rant, but I just wanted to add this little mini part in here just to not only like give my context and also not ruffle up all the girlies' feathers, but also, yeah, like it's okay to like something and disagree with certain things. So with all that disclaimer and hoping people don't heavily dislike this, or it gets to the wrong people and they get really mad at me without listening to my ribbles and rambles first, let's finally get into the very first part, which is, what is Batman? Who is he? Okay, so for those of you who somehow do not know who Batman is and what he stands for, I will give this crash course, which is really crazy to say. Well, Batman, i.e., Bruce Wayne, basically his origin story, and this is for the girlies who are like, there's different iterations of Batman, blah, 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 blah. I'm doing the one that everyone knows, the iconic Batman, the one where his parents got shot in the alley and he decided to take up the mantle of being a Batman, okay? That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, essentially when he was a kid, he comes from rich parents. Honestly, hashtag nepo baby, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So his parents were rich. They were leaving out of a movie theater, and then his parents got shot by criminals, unknown. And when trying to figure out who shot his parents and trying to get justice, he lived in a crime-ridden. It was in a crime-ridden area where no one knew who did it, and justice was not served during that day. So he decided as a young boy that he will take up the mantle of justice. He will move to that area where his parents were shot. Excuse me. He will move to where his parents were shot and basically be the justice of Gotham City. Now, what isn't really talked about a lot, and I wish that a lot more people focused on media-wise, is one, he's still human. And that is in parallel with other DC characters. What I do like about DC is DC does try to make more humane characters, air quotes, like instead of focusing on their powers per se, or like their godlike tendencies or their immortalities and stuff, they do attempt to bring some humanity to it so that way it's easier to relate, right? So he's still human. He's not a god. He's not Superman. Let's get that out the way. But he does learn like all of the martial arts. He becomes a great tactician. He takes up the mantle of Batman because he's like the Dark Knight that rises and he wanted to be an edgy little boy. And he also inherited his parents' fortune. So it's implied and it is talked about throughout different comic versions, depending on which one you read, that he uses most of his money for philanthropy. How do you say that word? Basically, he donated a lot of money to charity. There we go. He donates a lot of money to charity, but also he uses that money to fund his Batcave and his addiction with adopting children and forcing them into the life of crime. We'll get to that later too. And so essentially that's what he is, right? And another thing to note about his morality is that he doesn't want to kill people, right? Because he's the justice, but he's not the justice system. Does that make sense? And when we get into it more, girlies, it's gonna be like, wow, this is really dumb. I get what you were doing. Okay, like this was a rough draft and the devil judge just did the extra credit. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, he's no comparison. But anyways, so that's essentially like his background. Now, some things that I personally like about Bruce Wayne. I do like that he's human. I do like that he is not an indestructible person. And there are different points throughout him fighting crime and having these different villains where he gets defeated or he gets his back broke. But yeah, I do appreciate that. I appreciate that he's not indestructible. I appreciate that there's some leaps in logic to his abilities and things that he's able to do. I do like that he's more of a detective and instigator or investigator more so than he is like, you know, crime fighting justice, which is a lot of what Marvel tends to give you, right? So those are some bonuses. I also do love the Robins. The Robins are varied. You know, we have main Robin, we have female Robin, we have wheelchair like we have different Robins. There's actually a webcomic about that and it's actually really wholesome and cute. I really love it. So I love that they also, the different variations of Robin have their own personalities and the reasons on why they're joining Bruce, aka Batman, on the adventures, and they do eventually grow apart from Bruce and become their own superheroes, which I really love, or vigilantes is a better term for what Bruce and the gang are, because they're really not superheroes. But again, other things that I like about Batman, I do like the aesthetic, I do like Gotham City, I do love the villains and what they stand for as well. I mean, Joker's a classic, you know, Mr. Freeze is a classic, you know, Bane is a classic, but again, there's more to them than just I'm a bad guy. And sometimes when you read through the comics or you consume the media of like official DC cartoons and novels and all that other fun stuff, you sort of sometimes you sort of side with them. So sometimes you're sort of like, dang, is he really a villain or is it just the economy? Maybe it's because I'm an adult now, but like, you know, Mr. Freeze just really wanted to save his wife. Like, is that such a crime? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So yeah, those are probably some of the main things that I would say I really like about Batman and some of the characteristics and attributes that I like about him. I also love Alfred. Almost forgot about Alfred. I do like the Butler. The Butler's great as well. I don't think he gets enough shine in what he does because there are various times throughout the comic where Alfred actually has to like pull up his bootstraps and fight. And there was this one moment in comic, if I'm able to put it up here, I can. If not, the girlies that know, but there's this one time where like Alfred was defending the house and and the enemies were like, oh, you're just a butler. He's like, oh, see, that's the problem. See, Batman doesn't kill people. I never said that. I never took that out. And I was like, ooh, let him know, Alfred. Let him know that you're not a housemaid. You be out here killing people too. Okay. But yeah, those are some of the things that I like. Now I'm going to talk about things that I don't like. Things that I don't like about Batman. Okay, I recovered a little bit. Here's some of the things that I don't like about Batman. Okay, first off, I don't like that he surrounds himself with the Justice League with other people who are not human and like the comics and like the fandom and like the people who are really deep into the lore. I'm deep enough to where I could keep a conversation, but I'm not deep enough to know that like Batman had a pinky toe. Like I know about Batcow, okay, but like I don't know deeper than that. Does that make sense? Also, Batcow is adorable. And it's real and it's canon. Anyways, I don't like that. I don't like the feeling that he tries to compare with others. Like the fact that Batman versus Superman was such a big debate, and then we had the movie where technically it was proven that Batman will win, which honestly, who cares? But a lot of people do. I don't agree with, because it's like, you're human. And sometimes in the comic too, they forget that he's human. Like there was this one comic scene, I wish that I could find and pull it up, because I swear to you, I'm not imagining it. But basically he got like nuked. Like he had a whole meteor drop on him and everything, and it was like a big thing. And this is not even like, because there's different versions of Batman where he's not human and he's like an alien or whatever, like a what if you will. So that's separate. But like, this is mainline Batman that is canonically he's human. And like he gets like this nuclear drop on him. It was like this big crater scene that happened. And he walked out of it and was like, I'm Batman. Like, no, you're a robot. You're a cyborg. Like, what do you mean I'm Batman? So that's one thing that I don't like. Another thing that I don't like is, what does justice mean to him? Like, yeah, just because you don't kill them doesn't mean you don't like incapacitate them forever. Like, and the way that he be throwing hands with the regular street thugs and then the way he be throwing hands with Joker are not the same. Because it's like, okay, how are you able to put this man in a wheelchair and he's just a goon trying to make a 9-to-5, trying to make a living in Gotham City, which you've already stated is not a great place to live, but people have to live there because they can't afford to not live elsewhere, right? Like, how are you gonna break his kneecaps? But then when it comes to the Joker, nothing. Like, I want the same energy, you know what I mean? Like, he hit your partner with a crowbar and the best you're gonna do is cry. Breathe. Anyways, yeah, I don't like that aspect of him. I don't like the aspect of like, oh, I don't kill them because, you know, I want the law to handle them and death is too easy for them and like whatever social justice code that he has. That's stupid to me. Because like, if that's the case, then you shouldn't be breaking their bones the way that you're breaking their bones, especially for these like, that, you know what I mean? Like, don't be throwing hands the way you're throwing hands with these civilians at the end of the day. Like, they're bad people, but they're not bad guys. Like, he throws hands with these general people, and I'm staying on this point because it's really ridiculous. And when I get into Double Judge, you'll understand why I'm focusing on this a little bit more. But he really be throwing hands with like these lackeys and then not have the same energy with the others. It's killing me. Like, I don't know. But it just seems really crazy to me that you're willing to like bust the skull of a robber, but then when the Riddler has a riddle for you, you don't bust his kneecaps either, right? Which leads into my next point. I don't like that he doesn't kill them, but also he like, how many times do we have to hear about one of his main villains going to Arkham Asylum and then them escaping for you to realize that Arkham Asylum isn't as secure as you think it is? Like, it's such a occurrence that, like, it gives Lego. It gives Lego Undercover. It gives, like, it's giving Team Rocket. Like, we're blasting off again. Like, are you serious, girlies? Hello? Like, what makes you think that by putting the Riddler, Joker, Bane, Poison Ivy, like all of these high-level mutant people who have on record consistently been able to break out of the jail cell, what makes you think that this umpteen time is going to change it? And then what's crazier is every time you send them to jail, right, or to that prison, they're talking with other villains and then they team together. Now you have the villain League of Doom. I forget what the villain team is, but they end up teaming up with Lex Luthor and everybody, right? So, like, you just made Gotham City worse, in my humble opinion, because now Joker has other friends from other cities and franchises to fuck up. You feel me? So, like, your code of justice is very flawed and it doesn't do anything for you. And, like, I don't like that it's sort of like a way to take the high road at the end of each comic where it's like, he didn't kill them because they need to feel all of the weight of the world and the justice on them. Do they? It's looking like a feather. The weight is a feather. Like, hello? So yeah, those are like some points that I don't really like about Batman. But my final point, which I feel like not a lot of people talk about, because the other stuff that I said, I feel like people are starting to talk about more and joke about more. But the final point is, like, what does his money do for everyone? You know what I mean? Like, if he's such a philanthropist, that's the name of the song. If he's such a philanthropist and he does so much for the community and, like, he donates and does stuff, like, why is Gotham still that bad? Like, you're a bazillionaire. Like, you're so rich. You're so rich. How rich is he? You're so rich that you could pay off buildings that you destroy, and you could create all this stuff in your Batcave, and you could support like 12 to 15 children in this economy. And, like, you can't fix the city. Like, I feel like there are other ways that you could handle your level of justice. And so it takes it out for me when you, like, come around with your Batcave sitting here like, I'm justice, I'm the Dark Knight that rises, I'm not what the town needs, but I not the town wants, but needs. Like, no, we need your money. We need your financial support. We need your brains to restructure how the city operates and works, because clearly it's not working. Like, he could, like, am I wrong? Do you guys feel what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, it's giving, like, if Mark Zucker, like, how would you feel? How would you feel if you found out that Mark Zuckerberg was really, like, Batman all this time and he could have just erased student loan debt? Like, how would you feel? Like, how would you feel if Elon Musk turned out to be Batman and you find out that he's been using all of his money to fund this project in the Cybertruck or whatever, to, like, stop crime instead of, like, actually fixing the pay wage gap? You know what I mean? And to be fair, I'm not 100% sure what the parents did before, like, Bruce Wayne owned a whole bunch of companies and had all this money or whatever. So I don't know if he's paying his workers, like, a fair wage for whatever properties and stuff that he owns. I'm going to assume he does, because the comics do go out of their way to make it seem like he's a generous person that genuinely cares about people who are doing good, right? But even still, like, are we trusting that? Because, again, if he's such a good guy and he donates so much money and he does so much for the community, then why don't we see that in Gotham at all? Like, even if we exclude the bad that the villains do, a lot of the reasons why the main villains are doing what they're doing, it's because of financial reasons. So, again, it baffles me on how I'm supposed to think that this guy's such a great guy and he really doesn't do anything at all. He makes a good storyline, but that's it. And with that being said, I'm going to get into the Devil Judge, because the Devil Judge does this plot line and does some of the things that I had problems with and fixes it and makes it more logical and more interesting. And it's just better. It is. It absolutely is. The Korean girlies are just outdoing us right now at this point. They really are. Okay. So, I'm finally going to talk about the Devil Judge. For those who are still with me after I roasted your fave, thank you. If you don't care about Batman, even better, because I have a better solution for you so you don't waste all the time and energy and patience that I did getting into the franchise. The Devil Judge. The Devil Judge is a show on Netflix. It is a K-drama. I don't want to call it a K-drama because a lot of people, when I say K-drama, think like more romance or fantasy or whatever. It's listed as a thriller. I'm not in like the thriller horror fandom. I actually can't stand a whole bunch of blood and gore. And that's not in The Devil Judge if that's something that you're worried about. There are some bloody scenes, but it's something to which I personally can handle. So I say this all with a grain of salt. If you're someone that can't handle seeing blood or like people in pain or things of that nature, then I would recommend either listening to me and my synopsis or also just like watching clips and stuff to avoid it. But for those that can handle it, again, it's not that bad. But I don't like saying it's not that bad and then someone has an even lower tolerance than me. But essentially, disclaimer out of the way. Essentially, The Devil Judge, we follow this guy right here. I'm just going to call him K Batman, or Better Batman. You know what? I'm just going to call him Better Batman, because he is. So Better Batman, essentially, is set in a dystopian Korean world where like crime is rampant. There's such a huge poverty to rich line, like it's even bigger than what the US is dealing with right now, which I know is crazy to think of, but just imagine, right? And so what the higher up conglomerates who also run this fund that's supposed to be a fund to help donate and help with the poverty that is running rapid, and the poverty leads to crime because, you know, without a way and means to live on your own the correct way, you're going to try to find a way and means to live the incorrect way, right? So essentially this big conglomerate, which is full of rich people and the people who control the society, essentially, they have this fund, and with said fund they decided to make a people's court where there will be 3 sitting judges, and said judges will listen to a person's case and will decide like a punishment or like an option of a punishment. And then instead of them ruling like guilty or not guilty, it's broadcasted to the entire public to sit in and watch. And everybody who's watching gets to vote whether or not that person deserves that punishment or if they're guilty at all, right? But even saying guilty or not guilty isn't really fair because it's sort of like approve or disapprove of what the judges want to do or say. So like a person may deserve like jail time, right? But instead of them saying like they're guilty of the crime, it's more so like, do you think this person deserves jail time? Does that make sense? Sort of subverting our expectations of what guilty and not guilty means. So yeah, that is essentially the premise of the show. Now, things to note. When the big conglomerate made the 3 people who are sitting as the judges, the 3 people. One is our main dude. To prevent me from saying his name wrong, I'm just going to say K. So we have main dude K, and I mean, look at him. But anyways, we have K, and his background I will get into later. But just know that he is one of the rich people's societies at this point in time, right? Like he is also affluent. He also has a lot of money, like more money than he needs and can handle and can deal with. So he also has a law background. He went to, the school and everything. He's been a proceeding judge before. So he's the head judge. K is the main judge. Then we have Ga. Right? I'm going to just say his name, Ga. I believe it's pronounced Gaon, but again, I want to prevent myself from mispronouncing the character's names wrong, so I'm just going to name him Ga. So Ga ends up becoming the second judge, and the reason why he becomes the second judge is because his professor, who he studied under, right, was able to get him a seat on there because essentially he's like the mole. He's like something suspicious about K, and I don't know what about it is is wrong with him, but like something doesn't feel right and seem right. So I need you to be on the board and like get close to him and like give me information and find a way, like maybe we could get him off the board, because I don't think that he's there for the right reasons and for the people, essentially. And so that's his role. And then there's the girl's role. Now I'm just going to ignore her, and it's not because she's a woman, but also we've had this talk about Bob Girlies. And is she a Bob Girly? So what happens? She doesn't get it done, and that's okay, and that's fine. She really doesn't become important until like probably episode 8 or 9. There's 16 episodes of this, by the way, and each one's an hour long, just to give that little pro warning. But I would say she doesn't even really become prevalent until around 8 or 9, and even then her involvement was such a slow burn, and some stuff does happen because she gets into the position that she gets to because of other people, and again I'll explain when I explain, but she's not important, so I'm just going to ignore her. But just know that even though I'm not mentioning her, she was pretty crucial towards the very end of getting stuff done, and I did like her mini arc of like women empowerment, which again, I'm side-eyeing not because women empowerment isn't great, it's just sort of the person that you let empower you was not a good person, which again talks and addresses a lot of different issues that I'll get into. And so that is essentially the world. And over the next couple, and like throughout the course of the episodes, it's handling court case and having these really terrible people who are like rich and affluent, and people who normally in a normal court would have gotten away with it or would get a really light sentence because they use their money and power and influence to get away with stuff, but instead during this people's court actually get the justice that they deserve. But there's a hint of like, this also has like a negative effect to it, which I really love. Now I know what you're thinking, Tiana, this sounds like a really great show, but like this doesn't sound like Batman, so why are you saying it's a better Batman? And I will get to that in the next part. Okay, I'm back. So, Tiana, why am I saying that The Devil Judge is a better Batman in a better Batman story? Because essentially that's what the theme of it all is. I know I glossed over it, but Kay is essentially Batman, okay? His backstory is that he is the younger brother of like the person that was supposed to inherit his parents' money and funds. Remember, his parents are exuberant, really rich, but he was always treated as like the outchild because technically he is his father's legitimate son, but like things went awry with that, so like they basically hide him, and he like lives in the basement, and it's a really sad story. But he's also like deemed as the troublemaker. Like they basically blame him for stuff that he doesn't do, but he just accepts it because he's used to people viewing him a certain way and just leans into it. So fast forward, he's very close with his older brother, by the way. The older, like, imagine like he sees the worst in people because he's been treated the worst by people, and his older brother sees the best in people because he's always seen the best in people and people have treated him the best. Does that make sense? So anyway, Kay's older brother is the only person that he truly loves and respects, and is very protective of the older brother because he's very gullible and tends to see the bright side of everything, even when there isn't one. So his brother had a daughter, which is Kay's niece, okay? And what was going to happen was Kay's brother was going to donate a whole bunch of like the family's money, like think about like half, or like even like enough to where it would change Kay and Kay's brother's lifestyle to where it's not as rich and fancy as it would be, but still enough to live, if that makes sense. So essentially he was going to donate all of his money to this fund. Remember, the big conglomerate fund, but this fund really is just for rich people, and the money does not go to the poor people like it was supposed to be for. And later on, spoiler alert, I mean, honestly, if you've gotten this far and you haven't seen the spoiler warning that I gave at the beginning, I'm going to assume that you want me to spoil these things to you. But anyway, spoiler alert, the conglomerate is actually really bad, and these rich people essentially use all this money that's donated and use their own money and influence to raise themselves higher, and again, like widen the gap between rich and poor. And their plan to help fix the economy and fix the place that they're living in, is essentially using the money to make concentration camps, to essentially like force all the poor people to live there, and essentially like deport the immigrants. This sounds very familiar, but essentially blame the poor people for why the crime is the way it is, and reshape the society to where only rich people and people who have money reside, and they are the rulers of it, right? They are the kings and the queens, they're the shadow company, and the poor people just die off. Because if people are happy and rich, then they're not going to question the authorities to be. But if people are unhappy and poor, they're going to like have an uprising. They're going to change what it is now. They're going to want more fairness, and they don't want that. So it's essentially like sort of a monarch's way of being like, blame the poor for the poor things that happen. Does that make sense? So yeah, really bad. So anyway, Kay finds this out, and he is able to sort of convince his brother, but not really. But anyway, the brother was very religious, and he wanted to have a like religious ceremony of the donating of the money to basically bless the money that's supposed to be given to the conglomerate. And during said ceremony, a fire breaks out, which is another thing throughout the entire show is hyped up to be like, who started this fire? But anyway, the fire starts, and in the midst of the fire of the chapel, right, his brother was waiting outside because he wasn't religious, but he ends up hearing the fire and goes in and sees the commotion. All of the conglomerates of this religious factor are running out of this building. One in particular ends up even crushing his niece, so that way she is like literally disabled throughout the entire show. That's why she's in a wheelchair. And his brother ends up dying because of this fire, and Kay, being the rational person that he is, decides to incite vengeance on every single one of the people who left that burning building and did not try to save the niece or the brother. Which, you know, they would have been able to do, because he was able to save the sister. And if it wasn't for that one lady crushing the baby niece with the pews or whatever, she wouldn't be in a wheelchair and wouldn't be wheelchair bound. But because of all of that, and remember, because he's hated by everyone, he basically lives alone, not by choice, but by force, because he fears that if he gets close to people, they'll get hurt, but also he doesn't want people to have leverage over him, especially with the things that he decides to do. But it is so good, because the way that he enacts revenge is not by like, you know, tussle. It's not a tussle like Batman, okay? He uses the same thing that he was placed under, which is the court, the people's court, right? To not only exact revenge on the people that has ever hurt his niece and him and his family, but does it in a way that also causes a revolution with the common people. Does that make sense? I'm in the next part, I'm gonna like do the pros and cons of the show, but I just want you to get the theme and how juicy it is and how dramatic it is. And Ga, right? Ga is basically his Robin, and he turns into his Robin towards the end of the show, where he's like, I see what you're saying. Like, at the end of the day, you being on the straight and narrow and following the rules isn't going to work, because the rules were made by the people who are meant to oppress you in this world, right? It doesn't reflect real life. So yeah, I love that so much, and it makes such a better comparison and explains a lot more things. It makes a lot more sense, and then you get more of a feeling that, you know, throughout the show you question, like, because everybody paints him to be the devil, right? And they call him the devil, and he's a horrible person, and don't get close to him. But as you go through the story, and you tend to see it based off of Ga's eyes, like we're basically following along with Ga to figure out, like, did he really do this? Did he really do that? Was he really this horrible of a person, right? You realize, one, no, he really wasn't. But two, just because he didn't do the things you thought he did doesn't make him a good guy in this either. And the ending is so sad but so satisfying, and I love it so much. So with that being said, and if my little tidbit and little mini spoilers here and there, I didn't spoil a lot of things, but I spoiled some. But if that doesn't get you to watch the show, I don't know what will. But in my next part, I'm basically going to take the same way of comparing and then explain why The Devil Judge is better. So I know what you're thinking, Tiana, even though this sounds like a really interesting show, and I'm definitely going to watch it because you talked about it and you seem really enthused about it and it sounds like a really great show, why do you keep saying it's better than Batman? Like, I get the comparisons that you're saying now with Batman in terms of like justice and the world and the judge system and having a Robin and the Robin also having an independent mind and behavior. But like, what makes it better? Well, let's start off with the things that I didn't like about Batman. One of the first things that I didn't like about Batman was I didn't like his sense of justice and the way that he doesn't kill people. And like him enacting justice never worked because the people would just keep doing the same thing over and over and terrorize the people that he's claiming to protect. Well, first off, in The Devil Judge and Kay, he cares about the people mainly because his brother was the good of the world and he died and he wants to preserve that. He has a little bracelet that he keeps to like preserve it, but he really doesn't care about the people. He cares more about enacting revenge, and I could get behind that. Not the revenge part because he does a lot and it is extreme, but I'm saying like that makes more sense to me than like getting on your high horse and being like, oh, my parents were killed, so now I care about the poor. You know what I mean? His thing is sort of like, I'm using the people to enact my revenge because I know the people have the same problems that I do with the people that I'm enacting revenge upon, which is again the big conglomerate, like the president, like the Department of Justice, like some really big and powerful people, right? So he does have a care for them, but it's more so like, I know that y'all want to get revenge on them too, so I'm helping y'all, but at the end of the day, they're mine, right? I love that, and I can get behind that because that makes more sense to me on, you know, adding some levels of sympathies to him because it appears that he cares about these people when in reality he does and doesn't. He cares more about himself and the goal that he wants to achieve more so than he cares about the people that he's helping, though the people that he's helping do see the good in him, which again is also God, and we'll get to that later when I get to the Robin. But I love that, and it makes more sense. Also, when he gets revenge on the people that he gets revenge on, they don't come back. And if they do, if they do come back, they're wounded. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, the head of the detective or the head of the Justice Department, the lady who was the one who ended up crippling his niece, right? She is like a reoccurring character, but every time she comes back, she gets worse and worse and worse. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like she comes back bigger, better, bolder. Like, you know, like, I'm saying like a lot, but you understand what I'm saying? Or like some of the other people that he gets revenge upon, they also are in turmoil, and we get to see their turmoil. Like, we don't get to see the villain have their aha moment where it's like, I'm at top. And even the time that it looks like they're on top, it's all going according to Kay's plan. So I love that aspect about it. The other thing that I love is that is that he is using his money for the revenge, and you see what his money is doing in like how it's helping or whatever the case may be. And the people that he beats up also deserve it, which is another thing as well. Like, at no point in time do I see him beat someone up and I'm thinking, I think you're going a little bit too far, bestie, because they're like all scum and trash, and you get to see the humanity of these people and like that they're real monsters in the world, and sometimes they don't deserve your forgiveness no matter how much they play in your face. So I love that as well. But also, I love that at the end of the day, he's human and that he's not untouchable. And I know that I just spent all of this time talking about how everything goes according to his plan and everything's so meticulous and blah, 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 blah. But there is a point in the story where something happens that wasn't planned, and he ends up having to improvise at the last minute. And he has like this big scene where he does in fact kill the people that he does kill some people. But again, I'm trying not to spoil too much to where you still are enticed to watch it. But I love that, like, and I love seeing the world building. Like, we see the world through God's eyes because his parents also passed because of a corrupt person that ended up scamming his parents in his restaurant for millions. So his father ended up unfortunately unaliving himself, and his mother died from grief. So it you see his point of view, and you see that he really wanted to kill that person but decided not to because his friend, his bestie, his, significant other, not significant other per se, like they have a will they won't they. I don't really care too much about their will they won't they, and it's done in a way where it's like it doesn't get annoying, but it's not a point, it's not a huge point of the story, if that makes sense. But they're besties. Decides to be a detective later on and a cop, and basically convinces him not to, and so he tries to see the good in people and tries to get past it, but then realizes like, no, actually playing the game of the rich will always make you lose unless you play a winning game. Which he's like, yeah, I'm gonna play a winning game. I'm gonna win. Like, I'm tired of like it's essentially like he was believing in his professor's rhetoric of like, you have to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and believing that if you do that, then maybe one day you'll get rich. That's not the premise, but I'm just giving you guys an example, just a really silly example about how sometimes the rich tell you things and make you believe things just so that you stop their attention on them and like, fight each other. But that wouldn't happen in reality. I'm so glad this is dystopian, by the way. But yeah, like it does better. It is better. And he is such a better Batman for it, because I also feel like his Robins, if you will, especially Ga and some of the other characters that are used throughout the story, they have a reason to work with him, but they also don't idolize him. Does that make sense? Like, they have a reason why they're with him, and they choose to work with him. They're not being forced to work with him. And yeah, an argument can be made that God was sort of forced to work with him, but at any point in time, he could leave, and he knew that. And there were points in times where he did leave, but then he decided to come back after like actually believing and listening to Kay. And I love that. I love that so much. And then the Joker, in big air quotes, the Joker, first off, what did I say about Bob Girlies? They get it done. And even the director has a Bob, and she also gets it done, but also she's the villain, so you'll see where that goes if you watch it. But even their Joker adjacent, who ends up being really crucial and important, she also has a good point as well, and they end up being two sides of the same coin, and I love that dichotomy with them. To where it's like he's doing stuff his way and she's doing stuff her way, and they really don't hate each other, and they really don't have a beef with each other, but because of some things that happened in the past, she can't forgive him, but then later on forgives him because she still actually really loved him, and there's like misconception and lies that all get revealed at the end, and it's so good. Please watch it. But yeah, it's just better. It tells a better story. It makes me root for K/better Batman so much more, but also I'm not deluded in his sense of his abilities and what he can do, because at the end of the day, he's still human. He still has people that he cares for. He still wants to get revenge, which again makes more sense than just being a vigilante. And you actively see the change that he's doing to the people, for better or for worse. It tends to be more better than worse, and God ends up holding the mantle of like, there's good in the world that we should protect and save towards the end of the story. But it's just better. It really is. It really, really is. And if my however long video and ribble and rant has not made you want to watch this, then please do it, and tell me I'm wrong. If you have watched The Devil Judge and then you think that it's not better than Batman, or is the best Batman character you've ever seen and watched and displayed, then please comment that, because I would love to hear your opinion on how it's not. It genuinely, there are times where I gasped, times where I felt emotions, times where it sort of related into reality in an uncomfortable way, but also was spitting some back. Like, it's so good. and I don't know why it's being slept on. I get that like Squid Games and what is it, like Business Proposal and some of the other K-dramas have been really popping off, but genuinely give The Devil Judge some flowers. It is amazing. And I don't want a season 2. I hope there's not a season 2 because of how it ended. I think it actually ended up pretty nicely. But yeah. So DC, do better. You have competition. Okay, and again, if all of that did not get you interested in watching the show, thank you for at least listening to my rebels and rants on why I personally think that The Devil Judge is better than Batman and is the best version and iteration of Batman. I tried to explain my case, but also not spoil it too much because I genuinely want you girlies to watch this. Again, it's 16 episodes. It's about an hour long. I'm not sponsored, but Netflix, you could always hit a girl up. And again, I personally was able to get through it. Towards the end, it does get a little bit more bloody, but the blood isn't gory. The things that are done isn't like too over the top to where it's like, I can't watch the screen. So it's done really tactfully, and it's more of a mystery than it is like a scary thing to me. But I will say, proceed with caution again if you are sensitive to those sort of things. Such as I tend to be very sensitive to sort of mysteries that are really suspenseful, or shows that, or crime shows that show way too much like action and realistic blood and gore. You really won't have too much of that. But again, if that's a concern of yours, don't watch it. I would recommend again listening to other revels and rants of other people who have watched this, or watching or reading a synopsis of stories, because that's what I tend to do when I know something's too bloody and gory. I just read about it so that way I don't have to watch it. And yeah, if you've made it this far, please comment what you think, and if you agree with me, I hope you do after all of this. And with all of that being said, if you would like to see and hear more of my thoughts about other shows, other comics, other books, other whatever, feel free to comment and let me know. And with all of that being said, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!